Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the No BS Zone. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bernie Goldberg, and I'm here with my friend, the Renaissance man of the Rockies, John Daly. How you doing, John?
I'm doing good, Bernie. How about you?
Good. I want to talk today. We have three really interesting subjects, I think, but I want to start out with what I know is the biggest political story of the moment, and I would argue the biggest political story of the year so far. And it is the Social Democrats trying to take over the Democratic Party. Can they really do it, or will they go down in flames in the general elections? We'll know that soon enough. But the Democratic Socialists, John, they're not just winning in deep blue congressional districts in places like the Bronx or in Brooklyn. They have crossed the Hudson River. Earlier this month, they won a statewide U.S. Senate primary in Michigan, a battleground state. That's a big deal. We're recording today, Tuesday, and Tuesday night we will know the results of another statewide election, the gubernatorial contest in Wisconsin, another swing state, and the DSA candidate, the Democratic Socialist of America candidate, almost certainly is going to win, Francesca Hahn. By the way, she's a woman who once said she wanted to cancel Thanksgiving. This is how crazy these people are, and they're winning anyway. As I say, Democrats are scared. They have reason to be scared. These people, you probably know the laundry list by now. They want to defund the police. They want to defund the Department of Defense. They want free stuff. They want open borders. They want a reduced work week, but no reduced pay. They admit flat out they want to end capitalism. Okay.
Right.
So where the Democratic Party? Where's the establishment? A lot of them are hiding under their desks. They don't want to step on any landmines. If they attack the Social Democrats, what happens when the Social Democrats stop supporting them in elections? Okay. Bill Maher, a man of the left who is not running for anything and has nothing to lose, he has spoken out, one of the few people on the left who have spoken out. He says, not a week goes by where I don't read about some newly chosen, exciting new face in the Democratic Party. And when that face opens its mouth, the Communist Manifesto or some other crazy crap comes out. He didn't say crap, by the way. He used another word. He's one of the few people on the left speaking out. James Carville is speaking out, saying these people are effing crazy. And yet they're winning again, John, not just in congressional districts, but in entire states in middle America. This is serious stuff.
Yeah, it's you asked the question at the beginning, can they take over the party? Anything's possible, of course. I think you listed some of the DSA platform, and it's all largely nuts. It's crazy stuff, and it's also broadly unpopular with voters. I think that platform is, and that's why this is.
We'll find out soon enough.
Well, see, that's where I think I want to dive in a little bit, because it's becoming clearer to me that the energy that we're seeing behind the Democratic Socialists in this political moment isn't coming more and more from Democratic voters kind of swooning over to this DSA platform. I think it's coming from, it's more broad than that. I think it's coming from this frustration with the Democratic establishment, which seems old, impotent, and unable to do anything meaningful to stand in Donald Trump's way. Now, the biggest explanation for that, or that the right one, is that the Democrats are currently out of power. They're the minority party. They don't have the numbers to do anything meaningful, especially when, Trump's driving much of his agenda through executive actions anyway. But nonetheless, a lot of Democratic voters want to punish the establishment, and they view the Democratic Socialists as this youthful, energetic group that's willing to do just that. that's not an excuse. The platform matters. The crazy stuff matters, but I don't think that's what's driving this. I think it's this anti-establishment
Yeah.
sentiment. So that I'm less worried about. I think there'll be more people pushing back against the crazy stuff that's tried, but who knows? It's they're setting themselves up for failure either way.
Well, there's definitely a throw the bums out
Right.
attitude out there. Look, if the Democratic Party wants to hold on to power, it may have to take a peek through the rearview mirror. The future of the party may be in its past. In 1992, a rapper who called herself Sister Soldier told the Washington Post, if black people are always killing black people, maybe we should take a week out and kill white people. Okay. Here comes Bill Clinton, who's running for president of the United States, and he's at a Jesse Jackson Rainbow Coalition seminar, meeting, and he's standing right next to Jesse Jackson, and he says, if you reverse the words black and white, it would sound like David Duke delivered the speech. And that's what's come to be known as a Sister Soldier moment,
Right.
where he stood up to the radicals in his own party. You hinted at this, John. I think a lot of establishment Democrats are moribund. They're tired. They don't send off any energy. And
Not Chuck Schumer, Bernie. That's joking.
I'm writing a column, as I said, and there's a line in the column, I'll give it away now, that Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, and Hakeem Jeffries, his counterpart in the House, are giving off about as much excitement and energy as nap time in a nursing home.
Good one.
I think that's
It's true.
favorite line in the piece. I mean, so here comes a lot of young voters and a lot of college educated progressives who are older. And they're saying, the younger ones are saying, we can't afford food, we can't afford rent, we can't afford stuff. And here come the progressives saying, well, we'll freeze your rent. We'll give you free stuff. We'll give you subsidized food at our government run grocery stores. It's enticing. You could almost understand why they're doing it. But I think I'm not calling these people stupid, but I am saying they may be ignorant of history. I don't think they know who Margaret Thatcher is, let alone that Margaret Thatcher famously said, the problem with socialism is that sooner or later you run out of other people's money. I don't think they get it. And I am not at all sure, John, that come November, they're going to lose. They may, but the Michigan candidate who was backed by Bernie Sanders, Abdul El Sarid, I think, Abdul El Sarid. Anyway, he's a far left. He calls himself a capitalist, but he sounds just like a socialist. He may win in Michigan. He may beat the Republican candidate. And Francesca Hong, I don't know enough about Wisconsin, but she may become the governor of Wisconsin. If this happens, this is my final word on this. You can have the last word if you want, but my final word is if Social Democrats win in November, look out for 2028, my man. Look out for 2028 because they're going to demand a place on the ticket. And Bernie Sanders is too old to run, but AOC isn't.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So, we're talking about this in 2026, and there was a lot of discussion early on about whether or not this was going to help Republicans in the midterms. I don't think it will, just because I don't think people are scared enough yet of the Democratic Socialists. I think by 2028 things could change. I think they could potentially be a big factor in our national politics, and I think that would be a foolish move for the Democratic Party. But
but
they do a lot of foolish things. Both parties do a lot of foolish things, and yeah, it would not surprise me either.
If the Democratic Socialists win in November of this year, they will be a powerful force. They're not going away, John. They're not going away, and they will be a force in 2028. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
To the war in Iran. This war has gone on longer than Donald Trump had planned, and planned is the wrong word because he doesn't plan anything. He doesn't have a strategy. He's impulsive. When you're the president of the United States and you're about to make a big consequential decision, like taking your country to war, you got to play the movie all the way through to the end, and he hasn't done that. So what happens now? One day he threatens to bomb Iran into oblivion. The next day he says negotiations are working, and Iran says, what negotiations? I don't know how long this could go on. I suggested in my column this week, and I want to be very clear about this. I suggested it's time to fish or cut bait. It's time for Donald Trump to either not bomb them back to the Stone Age, but do enough damage, enough military damage that they're going to have to come to the table and make the deal the United States wants. Or he can say, we've won, we're going home, we're leaving. He'll declare victory, nobody will believe it. It won't be believed here in the United States, and around the world will lose credibility. Now, I am willing to accept, before I throw it to you, John, I am willing to accept that bombing a country won't end the war because they don't care how much you bomb them. Maybe Donald Trump is right and he's trying to strangle them economically. Fine, I'm for that too. I'm for bombing them or strangling them. My point is the midterms are right around the corner. This can't go on much longer. He's got to either find a way to end it or walk away and declare victory, which again, nobody will believe.
I think either way, he's going to declare victory. Bernie, that's the only thing I'm sure about. But my guess, just from watching this play out over the past few months, my guess is that Trump is going to end up offering the Iranian regime even more concessions than he offered them in the memorandum of understanding a couple of months ago, which would be extraordinary because the original MOU was basically a declaration of surrender. You know, we gave up the store, and yet instead of accepting the deal, Iran decided they were going to humiliate Trump and the United States by immediately violating their end of it and holding out for even more.
They're demanding reparations from us.
Yeah. And we've already the MOU, the previous MOU, we secured a lot of money for them. It wasn't quite, they're looking for specific, reparations, but we sort of offered that, coming from different origins, but it was very lucrative, that deal, and they gave it up. So now they're asking for even more. So we're at this point that Trump is now in a more desperate situation than he was a couple months ago, and I would not be surprised if the president were to go as far as letting Iran charge other countries or companies or whatever for using the Strait of Hormuz as a condition of them reopening it.
Hold on, John. Is this the same Strait of Hormuz that was open before the war started?
Yeah. I mean, if we end this war with Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz, which they were not in control of it, back in February, right. This would be just a terrible way to end the war. They could still hold hostage the U.S. not really the U.S. economy, the world economy. They could still do that whenever they feel like it. So I mean, if they end up in some way controlling the Strait of Hormuz, even if it's open immediately, that's going to be terrible. That's going to be a terrible way to end this war.
Somebody said, and this is an interesting point, that the mullahs in Iran are more worried about Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, than they are of Secretary of Defense, or of War, as they call it, Pete Hegseth. Because if the United States can strangle Iran economically, and they're in very, very bad shape already economically. If that ends it, count me in. I'm fine with that. They don't have to drop another bomb as far as I'm concerned. But final word, they better end it soon because November is right around the corner. And I know you believe, perhaps correctly, I've come around to your position actually, that Donald Trump doesn't care very much about who wins. He doesn't care much about his party winning or not winning, but whether he does or not, this is not good for the Republican Party the longer this goes. I don't think they have much of a chance of holding the House no matter what. But
Right.
if this goes much longer, everything, including the Senate, is up for grabs.
I wish I had the quote in front of me because Trump specifically said that just a couple days ago, and I don't have the quote because I didn't know that this was going to come up. But he basically, in paraphrasing him, he said, somebody asked him about this. He goes, "Well, I've already won my election. What do I care about what Republicans are dealing with right now?" And yeah, I mean, he came out and said it, and I think it's always been sort of obvious by his actions. He has no regard for for the Republican Congress, and he never has.
He hasn't played the movie through all the way to the end before he started this. I've said that. But
Right.
you know who is playing the movie through? Republicans in Congress who are
Right.
up for re-election. Oh, they're playing the movie through, and they don't like how this is ending.
And yeah, and Trump doesn't care because they will. What we've learned, one thing, if we've learned anything over the past 10 years or so, um, the loyalty that the Republican Congress has for Trump is pretty much unconditional at this point. He can treat them as crappy as possible, and they will always do his bidding. And we saw this recently. I wrote a column earlier this week about Bill Cassidy going through and approving Todd Blanche for the Attorney General position. This is someone who Trump just ended Cassidy's career. I don't know if it was last month or a few weeks ago in the primary. And he came out and did some tough talk about how he was going to be, this independent voice, and then he just kind of, he whimpered, and there was enough political pressure on him that he decided, well, I'll just go ahead and pass this corrupt guy Blanche because Trump wants me to. And there is sort of a battered wife syndrome to it, but it's the Republicans will, no matter how poorly he treats them, they'll be on his side.
All right, let's move on to my all-time favorite story. This one is too good to be true. There's been a debate for some time now about whether biological males, people who are born male, should be able to compete against women and girls in sports. Now, I think this is crazy. I think almost probably 85% of Americans think this is crazy. Biological males should not be allowed to compete against biological girls and women. But the issue is tied to transgender rights. If a transgender woman wants to play, should she be barred? It's all that kind of stuff. The reason this is an issue now is because two former NBA players, Ennis Cantor Freedom and Royce White. I know Royce White. I've interviewed him several times. These are two very bright guys. They are, if you haven't heard, you probably heard this, but if you haven't, this is too good to be true. They are declaring for the 2027 WNBA draft. They say we qualify because the WNBA says we're inclusive. We don't discriminate against anybody. Now they say the league is only for women. And this is the next sentence I'm going to utter is also crazy, but they don't define what a woman is. Now you say, what do you mean they don't define it? We all know what a woman is. Well, you remember when the Supreme Court justice was asked during her confirmation hearing? I forget her name. Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson Brown or whatever, Brown Jackson.
Well, I don't think it's Jackson Brown. I'll have to go back, but I know
You know what?
Jackson. Right.
She was asked, can you define a woman? And she said, no. She's not the only one on the left who can't define the word woman. It's crazy. So Ennis Cantor Freedom and Royce White say, we qualify. Eric Cantor Freedom says, I'll read it what he says. After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I'm officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. And Royce White, again, I've interviewed him several times. This guy is hip. I mean, he's smart. He says the following: I'm transgender. I'm a woman. I sometimes identify as a woman for purposes of professional basketball. Royce White is not transgender. He's not a woman. He's not close to either of them. But what makes this story so interesting for me, John, is that the NBA wants to seem virtuous. We accept everybody as long as they're women, but we're not going to define women, because if we define what a woman is, what happens when a transgender woman comes along? We have to let her in because we're woke. But then if we let her in, don't we have to let Royce White and Cantor Freedom in? I know this sounds crazy, but this is what's going on. Now, look, they're not going to be able to be in the WNBA. They'd average 100 points a night with 1 million rebounds. They're not going to be able to play. But I've been waiting for this from the moment this debate started about biological males in female sports. I said, wait until somebody like LeBron James comes along, and says, I'm a woman and wants to play. But wait until that happens. Then this whole house of cards is going to come crumbling down. Well, Ennis Cantor Freedom is 6'10" and weighs 250 pounds. Royce White is about 6'8", and he weighs more than 250 pounds. They won't let him in the WNBA, but the WNBA is going to have to define what the W in WNBA means. What is a woman? Crazy, but that's what they're going to have to do.
Yeah, so like you, Bernie, my longtime position is the biological males should not be competing in women's sports. That's a super majority position among Americans, and it's not because of bigotry. That's what some on the left want to present it as. It's because of it's fairness. It's a fairness issue. The woke left, on the other hand, wants to treat this as some sort of civil rights issue, but they as this particular story illustrates, they want to do so very selectively, and because of that, it's blowing up in their faces, and I have no problem with it blowing up in their faces. I mean, it's absurd.
No problem. I'm celebrating it.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm glad this is happening. I think it sheds even a brighter spotlight on the absurdity of this. I think most people have already figured out how absurd it was. They didn't necessarily need this, but this really, watching the WNBA squirm like this, I think there's sort of a justice to it, and I have no problem with it at all.
Here's my suggestion to my friends on the crazy wing of the left of the Democratic Party. I'm not talking about liberals or even progressives, but the real nut jobs on the far left. Why don't you say, and you could take this down if you're listening, take it down. I'll talk slowly. We are for transgender rights. We believe transgender people should be allowed to vote. They should be allowed to work. They should be allowed to live wherever they can afford to live. They should be able to marry. They should have all the rights that you and I and everybody else have, except one, just one. They should not be able to play, if they're a biological male, They should not be able to compete against biological girls and women. That's the only right, and it's not even a right. That's the only thing we don't give them the right to do. Everything else they can do. Now, why doesn't somebody say? Why do I have to be the one to say that? Why? I don't. Somebody should have said that a long time ago.
Do you think there should be like legislation put out to enforce this? Because I've always been fine with
No.
I was gonna say organizations making this decision on their own. I
Right.
don't think we need a law or anything to enforce this sort of thing. And I know I think Ron DeSantis has enforced some kind of laws related to this, but I don't think that's even a part of this, at least the story for me. I feel like this is such a cultural, societal slam dunk that no pun intended, that I don't think it's something that needs to be backed up by the law, but it's
Well,
so absurd that it should be obvious to people.
backed up to the law, maybe in this respect. If the WNBA doesn't change its rules before the WNBA, or doesn't clarify its rules before the WNBA draft of 2027, okay, which is coming up, they don't clarify their rules. These two guys are going to go to court. This could wind up in federal court, and they're going to say, you accept transgender women, right? Well, you identify people who identify as women. I identify as a woman. Why can't I play? It's an absurd argument, but it's logical given the craziness of the hard left. It's a logical conclusion, and I'm with you when you say you like to see them squirm. They brought this on themselves. All they have to do is add, when they say only women could play in the WNBA, and women are, the word woman is defined as the following. That's all they have to do.
Right.
And by
Yeah.
the way, let me add one other thing, and I'm just going to hint at this. There may be a player currently in the WNBA who's not transsexual, but there's another category. It's a biological category of people who were born as women, but with male characteristics. And it's a high profile player in the WNBA. If she's allowed to play with male characteristics, why can't Ennis Cantor play and Royce White play? They have male characteristics. This was bound to be what it is. This was bound to get as crazy as it's gotten. And for George Carlin, who I met and interviewed and spent a day with, gave me a great line, and I'm going to use it now to end this session today. He said, "Bernie, I root for chaos. This chaos is going to be fun. I can't wait to see how it ends."
All right. Something to watch.
Hey, John, tell everybody listening, because you're good at this, to tell their friends about what we've got going. Our sale.
Yes. For the month of August, annual membership, an annual premium membership to bernardgoldberg.com is just $25. That's 50% off the regular price.
It's a Dog Days of Summer sale.
Yes.
Now, everybody watching us already subscribes. You got to have a friend or a relative, right? You must know somebody out there. Get them a gift. Come on.
Yeah. Gift the 25, the 50% off is
we have.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bernie.
I said the more people we have listening to us and posting comments, the more influence we have in the political culture.
Absolutely. Yep. And that 50% sale absolutely applies to gift subscriptions. So, if you show your friend that you're a real friend and get them a subscription to bernardgoldberg.com.
I second that emotion. All right. Thanks, everybody. Really enjoyed talking with you. I hope you enjoyed it, and let us know what you think. Bye-bye.